Good afternoon. I'm Father David. Thank you for joining me today for Disciple Time as we are focusing on how God can work through all circumstances. And sometimes God takes the things the enemy meant for evil and uses them for good. Now, that statement in itself, I understand, is kind of dualistic, talking good and evil and that kind of thing. But the point is, God can work through anything. And here's a case in point. When my brother, and this is him pictured by that Jeep there, when he was in college, he played football and was in ROTC, and his dream was to become an Army officer. But something awful happened during a play at a game. He was side tackled. His knee was totally blown out by the tackle, and after the surgery, he learned that he would not only never play football again, but he had also lost his opportunity to serve the military because of that injury. And so his dreams of being an Army officer were kind of dashed. And this is in its time was a crushing blow for my brother Andy, and having all his dreams kind of dashed in that season of his life, he went through a period of kind of being lost. And neither one of us at the time, being very supported by other people, he turned, unfortunately, to alcohol and went through a hard time. And he worked here and there, but he had lost a lot of his youthful fire and vigor and direction. Now, I'm going to come back to that story in a minute, but I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about the readings for today. So, last week on Tuesday, we talked about how the stoning death of St. Stephen was just an act of pure hatred, really. And I think it's important that we understand that nothing happens in a vacuum, because this week in the book of Acts, we see how the death of this first Christian martyr actually became a catalyst for the movement. And so we read here in Acts 11:19, those who had been scattered by the persecution that arose because of Stephen went as far as Phoenicia, Cyprus, and Antioch preaching the word. So basically, what we have here is God advancing the kingdom through the disciples. And as they're forced out of Jerusalem due to the persecution they were experiencing, the gospel is moving to all these areas, all these new areas. And what I really like, and this is something Tertullian said, is that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. And he's just kind of recognizing that the more the church is persecuted, the more it seems to grow. And that was kind of an interesting statement. And we see why in our account in Acts, because as soon as Stephen is killed, we see this awful tragedy being used in a way to kind of get the apostles and the disciples even more fired up about the cause of Christ. And what do we learn happened in Antioch as the disciples were dispersed into that region? Well, we read in Acts 11:21, the hand of the Lord was with them, and a great number who believed turned to the Lord. And the passage goes on to inform us it was in Antioch, actually, where the disciples were first called Christians. So talk about God taking something the enemy meant for evil and using it for good. I'd say that's pretty significant. And in fact, this is what happened in my brother's life, right? So it turns out that my brother, as he overcame his abuse of alcohol, which he did overcome that, he was totally sober, he was led into a deep relationship with Christ and ended up not only getting his life back together, but found a new mission in serving the Lord. So first he did that as a captain in the Salvation Army, then as an elder in the United Methodist Church, and he served the Lord for a long time. He touched many lives in the Panhandle and the Gulfport, Mississippi area, and to this day, I have people texting me about how much my brother meant to them and how he helped them and helped their relationship with Christ. And he was among, actually, the first responders on the ground after Hurricane Katrina, and he really served the Lord. I mean, he was in the trenches. He was helping do cleanups. He was bringing food to people that didn't have any. and setting up food trucks and all that kind of stuff. So he was there, ground zero. So what changed my brother's life? Was it this awful football accident? Was it getting sober? Was it his profound relationship with Jesus? I think it was all of it that God used in Andy's life. And when people asked my brother how he had changed his life so much, he just pointed them to Jesus. Why? Because he knew there was nothing he could really tell them, that they had to kind of experience that relationship themselves. And so I love in the gospel here in the reading today when the Pharisees are asking Christ all these questions and they're so confused as to who Christ is and what all his love and compassion means. And Jesus kind of goes out and he says this in John 10:25-28, the works I do in my Father's name testify to me. But you do not believe because you are not among my sheep. My sheep hear my voice. I know them and they follow me. I give them eternal life and they shall never perish. Now, that is an inspirational verse for me when I think about my brother, because I think about the fact that my brother is experiencing eternal life with the Lord. And so all things aren't lost there. But what's the message here for us today? I think it's this. God can work wonders in our lives, even out of bad circumstances. So focus on your relationship with Christ. Whether things you perceive are going good, whether things you perceive are going bad, understand that God can work through everything that is happening in our life, and just focus on that relationship. Well, thank you for joining me today for Disciple Time as we've looked at God working through all circumstances. We'll see you next week.